Hey, Ray, we are in first place and we just split the series with the Padres, who some might regard as a real team. Is it okay to say the Mets are good now?
Well, let's use the word good in a certain way. Everything's relative, and in my family, everything is relative. So let's use the word good in a couple of different ways, shall we?
All right. Today's show is brought to you by the number 29, 23.558, and the meaning of the word good. Hey, this is my friend, Ray.
What's up? This is my friend AD.
Ray is a tour manager who's traveled the world with everyone from the Beastie Boys to the Rolling Stones, engineered artists from Devo to Jane's Addiction to Toni Braxton, and looked after the careers of comics like Jim Gaffigan and Dane Cook.
And AD is a national radio personality, heard on stations across the country, who started off as a major label recording artist that gave me my first job as a tour manager.
I still can't believe that ended well.
Well, we still talk all the time now, and when we do, it's about music and cooking and baseball, especially our beloved New York Mets.
This is Bands, Barbecue, and Baseball.
I have been fairly critical of the team in the last couple of weeks, even despite how great the bench mob is doing, and I want to be positive about that. There are many positive things to look at over these last couple of series. I as well.
You mean like the fact that we've been in first place for 31 consecutive days, an entire month now? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it almost feels like all the other teams are stepping out of the way, going, "Here, you take it," because
the division is not awesome. Like let's just say, well, okay, continue with your thought, but we got to discuss whether the division is not awesome, or is the division tough and everyone's eating each other alive.
There's a lot of ways that I've been watching the team play that I've been critical of them because of the fact that, one, I wanted to see how they would do against a real team. So yes, the Padres are a real team, despite how they may have played for their own good in this series. I've also been fairly critical of the team, how our team to me would look if we were, say, in a playoff situation like right now. Like say it was really coming down to big spots and things needed to be done. A couple of the times over the last couple of games where some of our big players have come up in a big spot and grounded meekly into a double play, or didn't really grasp the moment. That seemed to be the tone of the first two games against the Padres that we lost, albeit only by a single run, but we certainly didn't grab the mantle of those two games. These last two games having DeGrom and Stroman, who both pitched really well, and the Padres are limping. Their offense is limping a little bit. I mean, they didn't score even a run in I believe it was like 20 innings or so, going up against two good relief pitchers.
They're going up. I mean, if you go scoreless against DeGrom, I almost feel like that's forgivable. You know what I mean? Like I almost feel like after DeGrom pitches, they're like, yeah, what you gonna do? Like I have
which we've rewarded him with not even enough runs to win the games, so that he hasn't given up any runs.
So it was nice to see. It was nice to see him get the win. The complete and utter drought of run support for DeGrom. I'm happy. It's not. The situation isn't what it should be, but I'm happy to see it's corrected itself from the last year and a half or so, because that was getting embarrassingly bad. And I have to tell you, when the first two games of the series went the way they did, I was like, you know what? We fought. We gave them hell. We were the royal we. But I was like, we didn't roll over and take it. It was close. It was tight, and it proved that we're something to be reckoned with. And I kind of thought, as much as it proved we're something to be reckoned with, it shows like, yeah, almost, but not good enough. Is that the way the whole rest of the season's going to play out when we're up against any team of consequence? But in that third game of the series where DeGrom ran into trouble and he hit that bases loaded situation and got out of it in a very DeGromian way, But in that right after that was when our offense came alive, and I almost felt like when that happened, the team went, we got to get this for the GOAT. Like, it has to be done. I feel like the sticky situation, actually, given everything that's going on in the world of foreign substances, that's probably a poor choice of words. But the tough situation that DeGrom found himself in that third game seemed to ignite our offense. And I was like, maybe we need a little bit of adversity. Maybe we need something to push against.
Yeah, certainly adversity, certainly rising to the occasion. We got to give credit where credit is due to certain players like Lindor. His batting average, not only his consequential, very, very good hits, his OPS, everything like that over the last 2-3 weeks has certainly come around to what we were expecting of him. Mm-hmm. McCann is certainly hitting. Certainly, McCann can.
McCann sure can. I suppose going into the season with our two new acquisitions, the two biggest offensive disappointments were probably Lindor and McCann. People were like, everybody check the receipt because this is not what we paid for. And all of a sudden they're showing up. Maybe not. I don't think Lindor's firing on all cylinders, but he's a very different guy now than he was at the beginning of the season. But yeah, seeing him and McCann heat up that's been cool. And didn't you appreciate how McCann let what was it, Quinn? What's his face? The home plate umpire. Like, didn't you appreciate the way he let him have it when on that call?
Oh no, every once in a while there comes it's the same as a sacrifice fly. There's a sacrifice that needs to be made. The manager certainly makes it every once in a while, which Rojas did by getting thrown out for I believe his first time ever. No,
he got thrown out in Chicago, I think.
No, you're right. It's not a common thing for him to get kind of in that way. But to me, it's as important as a sacrifice fly that moves a runner over. There's a sacrifice that needs to be made. McCann, I think he was completely looking at the situation going, you know what? I sit behind this plate right in front of you the entire time, and you've called a crappy game, this game, the entire time. So guess what? I'm going to take it for the team. And so did Rojas. He took it for the team, and those kind of things are they're motivational. They kind of get everybody kind of up. So I looked at it as just another method, a mode for getting everyone kind of up and interested. Which certainly has helped.
It's funny because I think it carries so much more. If you've got someone who's known to be mouthy, if you've got someone who is known to pop off at umps, that sort of stuff carries significantly less weight. But with Rojas and McCann, you're talking about two of the most even-tempered people in Major League Baseball, I think. So when they lose their rag, it really kind of means something. And it's so funny. I wanted to bring it up to you. There was a guy who was pivotal in your career, I think. That I remember very well as being like one of the nicest human beings I have ever met in my entire life. And we met him out on the road for the first time when the band I used to be in, that Ray used to tour manage, was on tour with Third Eye Blind. And I am, of course, talking about Big Bill Ramey, the tour managing legend extraordinaire, who was like the production manager of this whole enormous thing where we were rolling with own production. It was a big thing. Nicest human on the face of the planet, and never saw him raise his voice once. And for people that, and you wouldn't have met him because why would you? But the guy used to wasn't he a WWE wrestler at one point?
He was tangentially involved with it. He was involved with the production of wrestling. He in many ways, I consider him my absolute mentor in this business. I wrote a song about him on my first solo record called Hard Ass, which he completely is not. I just I like the reference to him as being an immovable force of things. So I referred to him as a hard ass in that way. But he you're right. Sweetest, nicest guy in the world, and as efficient as being that way, so and getting things done.
Enormous dude, physically imposing guy, but comes across like an adorable teddy bear. Will give you the shirt off of his back. We were like this meaningless band limping along, and he would extend every courtesy to me and to like anyone around me. me that he really didn't have to. And like just one of the nicest humans I've ever met. And, I have very limited experience with him. You have a ton more. But I remember once when we showed up at some show, and I don't even remember what the circumstances were, but something wasn't right. And the tour was kind of being jerked around. And I saw his eyes narrow. I was like, crap, I'm standing well back. I'm getting out of the way of this situation. And, and it reminded me of the same thing. When you're known for being, one of baseball's nice guys or one of, rock touring's nice guys, and, you lose your rag a little bit, it has a sort of like it's felt, it has a lot more meaning. It carries a lot more weight. And I remember when that happened, I don't remember what was going on exactly, but it was this sort of weird us and them situation with the tour and the local production. And the moment I saw him get mad, I was like, I'm going out there tonight. I'm laying waste to this stage, me, little opening band guy. And I remember the whole night was nuts. And I feel like a lot of it was spurred by just seeing the big guy's eyes narrow for a second. And I feel like that's what happened with McCann and with Rojas when they got tossed.
Yeah, it's a very good parallel, and I do recall. I recall the situation, but I don't recall the specifics of it. But you're right; it was Halley's Comet in terms of how often something like that would come down, and it had a lot of impact. So, the parallel to how that is with with the team, it's the same when the benches clear for a brawl when something's controversial. There are teams that are just high strung to each other, and there are times when also it's a motivating episode. It's a motivating event. It also is showing team unity of guys coming to each other's defense, and there's a lot of historic evidence of that in all teams, and there are certain teams that have a certain animosity and let's call it I would call it hatred, but they don't play along very nice. It was very interesting.
There's
also
storied division rivalries, and it's weird because like the Mets historically have not had the best reputation as an organization or as a group of individuals, I don't think. But what's weird now is, like, I think about this all the time. Like, there was a point, I feel, where the Mets were the bad boys of baseball. Certainly when you harken back to the 86 team, and you hear someone like Keith Hernandez talk about it, where he's just like, yeah, this thing where you socialize with other players. No, you're there to beat them into submission. You're not there to be nice. You're not there to make friends. You are there to win. And like, he was like, but now everybody's buddies, so whatever. But it's like, I feel like in the, throughout the Mets history, they were known kind of as, they were bruisers. They were not necessarily the nicest bunch of guys. And it's so weird because they are if I have one complaint about the Mets right now, and I love them for how they are, exactly, but I feel like they could have a bit more of an edge to them. You know what I mean? Like, they're just these happy-go-lucky bunch of guys that are always down for each other. And it's working. They're in first place. They're winning. They're putting runs on the board. They're doing all this stuff with a team that's MacGyvered together out of spare parts. But I do feel like there is sort of like, I don't know. I don't like, obviously Machado is a scumbag, and I'm sorry if you like him, but he's not the nicest guy in the world. And when you're going up against a team like San Diego, you're like, oh, God, that guy, what's he gonna do? It gives a team a bit of an edge. And I would never advocate for poor, unsportsmanlike behavior, but there's, I guess DeGrom has that, because DeGrom has a real mystique. He has a real poker face. Like, people are scared of DeGrom, and like, the word gets out, he's there to humiliate you. And so I guess maybe stuff like that is our edge.
Well, there's certain personalities that kind of, I think, define a team. For instance, it was very, very strange to me in this past series that we had against Atlanta. There was the shortened one where two of the games got rained out, so we only really played one of those games. But there was a couple of games before that, and there's banter going on back and forth. Freddie Freeman at first base for the Braves is a very personable guy. Lindor, it holds court, like, on each base that he's on, and when he's in the infield, he's constantly having back and forths and smiles and talking and everything. And he has a particular relationship with both Machado and Tatis. So even watching in this last Padres series, it was, I mean, you'd see Lindor, barreling into second base, and he's literally having, kind of playful kind of episodes with Tatis. And then there was also a play with him when he hit a triple, and he came in and he basically slid in and grabbed Machado's legs from underneath, and he's, all smiles and, happy-go-lucky. That attitude, or that repertoire, that rapport with people, I guess maybe serves certain people. It certainly wouldn't serve some of our more legendary players, and that's what Ron and Keith were both talking about. Pretty critical of it, of saying, no, wait a second, we don't go out for beers with the guys. We on the field, we certainly don't interact this way. But there is personalities, I think, in this game, today's game, with a little bit more interactivity between players, going from team to team, and having played with these players. They might have been in the minors together. They might have come up in the draft at the same time. They might have shared a common coach, and they have commonalities between them. So there is a bit of that personality coming through. It did kind of surprise me seeing that against a team like the Braves, because there's no other team. To me, the Braves and the Phillies are the two most they drive me nuts. Those are my two most.
Those are your teams.
Those are my hated teams, and I hate to say it. I have such a great story of being in Philly. And being treated as a Met fan fantastically. I've taken many different artists back into the clubhouse, etc., through the artist relations departments. And the Phillies I think the Phillies are the nice. They've treated me nicer than anybody I could possibly imagine. And every time I'm down there, or I even call and have text back and forths with the A&R guy from the Phillies, who we still stay in touch and bust each other's balls about how the teams are playing and everything like that. It's great and surprising, because I can't stand the Phillies as a rival to the Mets, and I really can't stand the Braves as a rival to the Mets. So it's very strange in today's game right now to see how jovial they are.
I think the ones that always seem to wind up being the most social are the ones that get the most interaction time. Pete Alonso and Freddie Freeman are probably the most personable, conversational people outside of Lindor in the game. They'll talk your ear off when you're standing at first base. You're going to have a long conversation with the two of them. But I think first basemen, they're the chatty folks, and I don't know if that predestines you to wind up at first, or if you just wind up getting chatty because you're at first and you're seeing people the most, because people are going to get on first. Significantly less people are going to get on third, and when you're on third, you're a little bit more focused on a different part of the game, i.e., going home. So I think Freddie Freeman, unbelievably easy to like guy, and I think Pete Alonso, unbelievably easy to like guy. I don't think you're going to find too many people across Major League Baseball, players, coaches, any of it, that are going to say bad things about Freddie Freeman or Pete Alonso. And I feel like that's just because they get the most exposure. So they meet, they kiss the most babies and press the most flesh playing at first base. They'd make excellent politicians after they're done with this.
Very, very true. It's sometimes a bit strange. And there's the flip side of that. Pilar wearing his mask in the outfield said that he was getting he was getting heckled
by. Let me tell you something about San Diego. Having lived there for quite some time and having been on the radio there for 10 years, the people of San Diego are great. They are special. They are extremely nice. They are laid back. They love the things that they love. They are incredibly defensive sports fans, because everybody comes to San Diego that's not from San Diego. So the number of people in San Diego that are legitimate, lifelong, loyal to the soil Padres fans, it's an extraordinarily small number. So the radio station I was on in San Diego for 10 years, that we carried the Chargers. And, we'd have all these meetings all the time with Chargers brass saying, like, just once I'd like to see a football game where there's more people from San Diego than Colorado in the stands. And I was like, you're fighting a losing battle. Like, this is it. Like, the reality of being a San Diego sports fan is this. People leave, teams leave. And the reason they leave is because San Diego is so freaking expensive that nobody has any money left over to do anything whatsoever after they're done paying rent, after they're done paying their mortgage, after they're done paying taxes, after they're done paying for all of it, after they're done paying an arm, a leg, and whatever you got left over for your tiny piece of crap shoebox. So why are you there? For the beach. It's very hard to get San Diego sports fans off the beach because they've got no money, and it's a very, very dispassionate town sports-wise. And also, it's made worse by the fact that, especially during football season, if you're from Colorado and you're going to go see your team play on the road somewhere and it's the dead of winter, where are you going? Well, let's go where it's 65 all the time, and let's go to San Diego. So San Diego sports fans are in this weird position where there's not that many of them that are actually from San Diego because everybody comes there and no one wants to leave. And they have, like the Chargers bailed, their basketball team bailed. They got nothing. So they're extremely protective of the Padres. And I cool, hey man, whatever, no problem. I've seen all of that disappear at Petco Park numerous times and seen the worst side of really good people that are Padres fans. It's a weird thing, but yeah, people giving Kevin Pillar grief for the fact that he took a fastball to the face. And did you see how much of a gentleman Pillar was about it? He was like, I'm not going to say what they were saying, but it wasn't cool. He didn't back the bus over the people that were talking smack to him because he's too much of a man to do that. But it was gross. And
he referred to it more as this is disappointing. Like, it's a disappointing thing to hear, and you guys are sucks for doing it. So.
Yeah. But like San Diego, like the sports fans in San Diego, I've seen them get like I said, some of the nicest people I've ever met. I'm like, did you just say that? Like, I was at that game. Were you we found out, I think, after the fact. Were you at the Bartolo home run game at Petco Park?
No, I was not. I watched that on TV and jumped up like a little boy. So it was jumping up and down.
It was obviously it's one of the craziest things ever because you're sitting in the stands. And, a Cologne at bat is the stuff of legend. It's going to be highly entertaining and result in a strikeout, most likely. But you watch because they're freaking amazing. So he comes up, and I've never had a situation where I could say I was there until I saw that happen. But, you see it and you hear it. The first thing, you hear it, you're like, oh, crap, he connected. Oh, it's going. And from the time you heard the sound of ball hitting bat to the time it left the park, you have 25 different realizations in the space of about a second and a half. And then it happens and you're just like, your mind is beyond blown. The only regret I have about being there is that I didn't get to hear the home run call because it's one of the greatest home run calls in history, obviously. Sure. But when it happened, I am losing my ever-loving mind. The lone Mets fan, and I know that and that was weird because that was a trip where the 7-Line Army came out to San Diego. I marched through the streets with them and went, I guess I'm sitting in a different section. I'm the lone Mets fan in a sea of Padres fans, losing my mind. And some guy turns around to me and they're just like, I don't know what you're so excited about. It's just the Padres. And I was just like, hey, I am a New York Mets fan. I am well acquainted with that thing that you know so well. I know what it is to suck. Let me have this. I was just like, but it was so weird because I got some real ugliness from some Padres fans around me for celebrating the Cologne home run, which is stark contrast to the, whatever, man. And then at the end of the game, I'll never forget it. I stand up I go to leave the seats, and there's some older guy there in a Padres hat. He must be, about 70 years old, and he sticks his hand out and shakes my hand. He's like, "Good game." I was like, "There it is. I know, faith in humanity restored."
I'll tell you a story about having literally like the exact opposite situation of a game that I went to at Dodger Stadium as a Mets fan, sitting maybe in the first section behind first base, and being wearing my Mets regalia, but never really an overly like crazy over the top fan. And so at this point, the Mets were losing to the Dodgers, and literally 10 rows or so in front of me was a guy wearing a Yankee hat, and the Dodgers were beating us, and this Yankee fan turned to walk up the stairs to go to the bathroom or get a hot dog or something like that, and he comes walking up and he sees me and he turns to me and says, "Hey, we got to stick together." And my exact answer to him is, "Screw you." Like, I don't care if we're 3,000 miles away. Like, I don't need your help. And he walked with his tail between his legs further on. I don't need your damn help.
Oh my God, that's great. So, let me ask you this. It brings up an interesting point. I have never, ever understood. I've never understood people that are just fans of New York sports, where they are perfectly happy to root for the Mets or the Yankees. I'm like, how does that even happen? They're like, it's New York, whatever.
No, that doesn't happen with the Islanders or the Rangers. That doesn't happen with the Giants or the Jets. Is it a fair weather thing?
If your team's blown out, do you just jump ship to the other New York team because you want to stay loyal to the soil?
Me personally, no, but like they were
not
times,
you. No. Like I'm just
okay.
I'm trying to wrap my head around people. Perfect example for that. Like your friend Scott Ian, legendary guitar player of Anthrax fame, is a noted Yankees fan to the point where he's committed theft in the name of Yankees fandom. We got to get him on the show to talk about this.
Yeah, he would definitely be doing that.
But like you also tell stories of 1986. You and him watching the World Series. Him joining you and rooting for the Mets.
Yeah, we together in '86. I was a senior in high school, and Scott's a year or two older than me. But we had a little group of friends that all used to hang, and all were baseball fans. So in '86, when the Mets were going to the World Series, those mid '80s Yankee teams were not particularly great. So we just happened to literally watch the first game one. I was at game one, so we didn't watch that one together. And we
That's
obviously
unreal. That is unreal to me, by the way.
Oh, my father scored 2 tickets for us. There was a big controversy that year because it was the first time the Mets had been in the playoffs in so long, and there was a lot of critique of people like, who's getting the tickets for who are the people that are getting tickets for these postseason games? It's all the big corporate contributors and everything like that. So my father, who happened to work for a big corporation, was able to score 2 tickets that he gave to his son.
This is true in life. This is true as a Mets fan. This is true in so many different ways. Life is unfair. Occasionally, every once in a while, it is going to be unfair in your favor. And when that happens, you take it.
Well, let's put it this way. A buddy of mine who's also a massive Mets fan, Mr. Chris Sorgi, the former lead singer of my band, The Six and Violence, he and I, being lifelong Mets fans, I took him to the game. We were offered, I believe it might have been $500 or $600 a ticket at the time of someone, I'll give you.
Bear in mind, you're a high school senior, and that's $500 or $600 in 1986 money. So that's, I don't know how you adjust for inflation in that situation and adjust for the fact that at, age 17, 18.
It's roughly $1 million.
Right. Yeah. At age 17 or 18, that's probably more money than you've ever seen in your life. And there's probably not even a question in your mind, right?
Oh, no, I was like, there's no chance in hell. And we wound up losing that game 1-0, coincidentally, by a ball that went through Timmy Tuffle's legs at second base. But then as of game 2, Scott and a couple of other friends, we all got together, and we just happened to be at my parents' house. We watched the game there, and we were watching the game, and we had this lucky coconut, and like that my father had, like, and we just all
was this an actual coconut, or is this a plastic ornamental coconut?
It was an actual coconut, and so I mean, we kind of all rallied together about it, and then watched the whole rest of the series all together at my parents' house. So that's how Scott was. He was sympathetic enough as a Yankee fan to say, I'm going to watch this. He was, I wouldn't say overtly like crazy rooting for the Mets at the time, but if you recall, the Yankees were not great at that time, so it was maybe a little bit more sympathetic to be that way. The 2000 World Series, I have to admit, I hated that Yankee team. Well,
I mean, that was just, you have one of the worst humans in history pitching for the Yankees. It's like easy. It's like
oh, you've seen my black Mets jersey that I made for that. But
I mean, even rivalry and attitude, and I thought it was a ball. As he hucks pieces of bat at Mike Piazza, all that garbage aside, genuinely terrible human being, like just a bad guy. So it's easy to hate.
Well, yeah, and as we were talking about earlier, how teams go through these personality rituals, and there are certain teams that are, like you said, are considered the bad boys and kind of rough and tough, and then several years later, as the team is turned over into a different personality, those teams have a different edge to them. The Yankees teams had a really strange kind of attitude going into the 90s, when that core group of young players that literally gave them 5 World Series championships and are Hall of Famers, and that there was a certain mentality to that. But then they started picking up all the pay rods, and their personality kind of changed to the point where I have a lot of Yankee fan friends that particularly didn't like their own team in certain stages because of certain players that were on it. The Yankees are actually having a kind of weird
what
time
did
right now.
Artie Lang, noted Yankees fan, I think he put it best when A-Rod was on the team. He's like, A-Rod's like a guy you pay to mow your lawn, and then he comes over and takes a dump on your lawn. He a great animosity toward the A-Rod situation as a lifelong dedicated Yankees fan. I think a lot of people felt that way, just didn't put it quite as eloquently.
Yeah, Scott actually, I remember talking to him a couple of years ago. This was when A-Rod was on the team, and he kind of I was talking to him. I was like, "Hey, you excited about the season coming up?" He's like, "I'm not going to pay attention right now." He's like, because he literally detested A-Rod. He was like, "I'm not into him, so he's on my team. I'm not into it." He recently is more back into it from talking to him, and as I was just saying, the Yankees are going through a little bit of a weird time right now. So several Yankee friends.
I feel like the Yankees, from the outside looking in, first and foremost, I think a lot of other people from New York have a lot more knowledge about the Yankees than I do. Because they're an American League team and we don't play them all that often, I'm limited to what I know unless we trade, with the Yankees, unless, someone comes over from the Yankees, my knowledge of them is very limited because I'm not about to watch a Yankee game. However, it's just, I really don't care. It's the weirdest thing, everyone, I'm in radio, and for people listening to the podcast that don't know, and I have been for quite some time. And whenever people hear me talk about baseball, specifically the Mets, are like, "Oh man, you should be in sports radio." I was like, "There's a problem. I don't know anything about sports." And they're like, well, "What do you mean? You can tell me exactly how do you feel about the Mets this year?" Like, "Well, the big problem going in this year is the same as always. It's the hot corner we really haven't known since David Wright, and there was no longer a Met. What was going on with that?" They're like, "You do know about baseball." I'm like, "No, I know about the Mets." And they're like, "But you know about baseball?" I'm like, "No, I know all about the Mets and a little bit about the teams we play, and it ends there." So I don't know anything about the Yankees other than I don't like, that overall vibe. When you had a real villain, someone like Roger Clemens to hate, and when you had that kind of ugly rivalry going on in New York City, you become a little more aware, obviously. But from the outside looking in, I never liked them because I was like, "Oh, it's just, you buy championships. That's what you do." There was no honor in that. That was my vibe growing up. But from the outside looking in, I feel like the Yankees right now are having a bit of an identity crisis. Like they don't know who they are. They don't know what they just seem kind of lost at the moment.
I happen to follow them pretty closely, not because I consider myself any kind of like Yankee lover or fan or anything like that, but I have several close friends, my cousin, etc., who are devoted Yankee fans, and we talk baseball. So I really do pay attention to the day to day of what the Yankees are doing, so I know what's going on. I know what's happening. And you're right. The last several years have been kind of strange because of the fact that they've had a squad, they've had a team that is basically a going for it playoff bound team with a concept, with a philosophy. The Yankee philosophy is that it's World Series or bust. And I've always actually been critical of that philosophy because it's the Yankees alone who don't succeed unless they win the World Series. And that sets up this very, very strange like kind of hurdle that, they can't have a good season. They also can't rebuild. They can't do several things. So several years ago, and this relates to the Chicago Cubs and the Cubs winning their World Series. Excuse me.
By the way, when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, it was one of like maybe 3 times in my entire life. I like the postseason as well, but it was like one of the 3 times in my entire life where I have been able to be emotionally invested in the success of a team other than the Mets. Like I really felt it. When I felt so good for the people of Chicago when that happened. I've got family there. I've got friends that are diehard Cubs fans, and I've got family and friends everywhere that are diehard fans of other teams. But like that was one of the few times where I was really able to share in the excitement in the success of any other team, and it took to the postseason for me to give a crap.
I get it, and me as well. It's a very sympathetic nod to them. But related to the Yankees was the fact that year the Yankees general manager Cashman really, made several moves that were, in terms of his general managing of the team, he made some fantastic trades for young up and coming players. He traded with the Cubs to give them Chapman, the Yankees closer, of which they picked up several really good players, all with the guise of like Chapman was a free agent at the end of the year.
He was a rental.
He just gets a rental, and he came back and re-signed with the Yankees. So the Yankees really had a good chance, and they re-upped on a bunch of players. They signed a massive player in Stanton to a humongous deal, and many of those deals have kept them just in the hunt of the playoffs where they've been for the last couple of years, but not succeeding where they win a World Series, where they have the only thing that they consider a success is winning the World Series, and they've not been able to do it, and they're just underneath that. Combined with this year, there seems to be a complete directive from Hal Steinbrenner that the Yankees, for some reason, financially feel that they need to get under the luxury tax level. So it appears that that luxury tax is a complete ceiling for them, so that right now, where they do need to go out and get a couple of players, change the philosophy of it, pick up somebody key that they could really need, you don't see them making a big move. And it appears to be because they don't want to spend. Now, a team like the Yankees, the highest priced a team in all of sports, basically, is claiming not poverty, but they're a $200 million.
Yeah, they're saying we can't afford it. They're like, yeah, you can. You're the freaking Yankees. They're like, right. I think also I think it has to be pointed out that part of what they're going through is they don't have, look, they had one of the most inspiring players in all of baseball, especially if you happen to be a Yankees fan, Derek Jeter. He's, I don't know what you make of him, but Yankee fans clearly love him. And I feel like they're looking for someone to be their Yankee. You know what I mean? They don't have that right now. They don't have someone to rally around. I feel like that, they're hoping Judge might be it, but it's just, it's too early for a guy like that. But I feel like you're totally right. They have this unwillingness to spend. And they have it's either World Series or bust, but we're not going to loosen the purse strings. And they kind of feel like a bit of like an anonymous team. Like I really don't, there's nothing, and you don't need someone out there making headlines, making the papers, like by, trying to be some sort of pseudo celebrity or social media star or something like that, a la Bauer. But it's, they need someone who is consistently great, that is tenured, that has been there for a long time to rally around. And I just don't feel like they have that right now.
No, and there's also criticism of Aaron Boone and whether he's, the type of manager that can really motivate players out of a situation like that. You look at it, you look at the team and how they're playing. They're still a couple of games over 500, but that for them has always been the boogaboo of like the teams playing as well as they are, and they never seem to be under 500. In fact, earlier this season when they were under 500, it was everyone was clutching their pearls of like, oh my God, the Yankees are under 500. Good Lord! So and they're playing in a division where there are some really good teams in that division. The flip side of their division to the NL East, there's in the AL East, there's one team that's under 500. In the NL East, there's one team that's over 500, and that's the Mets. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different kind of thing, especially with an unbalanced schedule where we play our division rivals that much more than we play other teams around our league, which is a whole other problem that I have with baseball that I wish they would fix. But the Yankees
you wish there was more interleague play?
No, what I would like to, I've got several suggestions that I think would make the game that I love a lot better. I don't like the unbalanced schedule where you play more games against your division rivals than against every other team, because that has now made it to where we only see the Dodgers come to New York once. We only see the Mets go to San Francisco once. The Mets were just in San Diego. That's the one time they will go to San Diego. The Padres are going to come to New York. It's the one time they'll come to New York. It used to be a balanced schedule with a lot more travel, albeit, I get it. But every team in the National League played like 12 games against every other team, and as a fan of seeing all these other teams, etc., I don't like that we've just tried to build up these division rivalries as if they're they did it because the Yankees and Red Sox had such a huge rivalry. They've played each other so much now that it's watered down and it's not really caring. Well, it's interesting you should bring that up, because like that, that animosity you feel toward the Atlanta Braves, like obviously, I'm not a Braves fan, but like I don't like that pure that pure white hot hatred that you feel toward like teams. Obviously our historic rivalry is with the Phillies, and but I never really had a problem with the Phillies until they got Bryce Harper, and I was like, oh okay. Because like I used to have a problem with the Nats. Like I would see and it was completely unreasonable. Anybody else who was, a rival of ours, I could see somebody in a hat for a team that, we had a long-standing rivalry with, and be like, yeah, I appreciate your enthusiasm for something that I understand and love. But I would just see, I remember being on a plane once, and like seeing a guy in a Washington Nationals hat get on the plane. I just said like, F that guy. And like the person sitting next to me was like, what? I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I'm a Mets fan. And they, clearly don't even care. The person sitting next to me, like, doesn't even care about baseball. And I felt bad because I dropped an F-bomb in front of a total stranger. And it was like, you don't want to, right as you're sitting down for a flight, the guy next to me is indiscriminately cursing at people when they walk on the plane. So can I change seats? Can we put this guy in the overhead compartment? But exactly. That was the one unreasonable knee jerk, F these guys, thing I had was with the Nationals. And I don't really care anymore. I don't really care because Bryce Harper went to the Phillies. It's weird. I don't feel that, but I think part of what you're talking about, the rivalry being watered down, is that you just see them so often, it's not like it was. You don't have that same sort of burning animosity because that
Yeah, we're probably gonna, if it's unless one of them's having an off season, the Mets and the Phillies, no one's gonna run away with it. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be, we're probably gonna split however many games we wind up playing, and it's gonna be a lot, and it's whatever. You know, like always want to see him win, but I think you're totally right. I think the way the game has been played, where you pit division rival against division rival, has watered down those historic rivalries.
Same as interleague play, which was brought in to try to stir things up, and the fact that there's an interleague game every single day now, I personally think it's like even if the both leagues adopted the same exact rules, i.e. the DH.
Yeah.
When and if that happens, even with the two leagues playing the same exact rules, the fact that they haven't been for all this time, and that the NL has a different philosophy in terms of how you manage it, sort of like that. I don't like interleague play now at all, and I loved the Mets playing the Yankees every year in the Mayor's Trophy game. It was always it was exciting, but it's exciting because it doesn't happen all the time. It's don't, anything that you do too much is not going to be as great as something that happens every once in a while. So and that's just my philosophy. So the couple of things that I personally would advocate for in a CBA, et cetera, like that, would be going back to a balanced schedule of all the teams, getting rid of the interleague play. And one other thing that I actually would like to see is, rather than the 162 game season, I'd like them to go to a 154 game season, which is what they were back in the day, and make a conscious effort of the playoffs being, if you shorten the season by just a little bit, you can make a real attentive to the wild card series, which I think it should be. I don't think it should be just one game. I'd like to see every series
the one game thing is like the one game wild card thing is, this is probably just me being sore about Mad Bum and Syndergaard in 2016. I feel like that should be a best of 3 situation. Like that sudden death thing, that's what you do when you've exhausted all the other options. You know what I mean? Which I guess in a way they have, but it's like, it just seems, it seems so counterproductive and so not what the baseball season is about, Yeah.
I would gladly go to a 154 game season and make it up by making the 3 levels of playoff series to be 7 game series, and make a wild card. I like the idea of the 2 wild cards facing each other. Make that a 3 game series. It rewards them for even getting there. It rewards the home fans of getting a game, possibly 2 games at their home field. It's just, I think these are things that are better.
Also, I think it's a better indicator of, who you are and what you got. You know what I mean? If you've got one lights out pitcher and the rest of your lineup is not necessarily all that much to write home about, big freaking deal. You're going to win the wild card. You're going to get into, but you're not going to go all the way. If it depends, if your success is predicated on a team effort, awesome. But if you've got one ace and a whole bunch of you're not winning the World Series. You're not, so I think, it's just not indicative of how the season is played, and to have that sudden death thing is just so weird.
Especially over such a long season. So
yeah.
The reward back in the day was for winning your division, which was a marathon to win. There was you basically got something for it. And so I'd like that to come back into the fold, where if you win your division, you get a bye in that first week. You get to rest everybody. You get to line up your pitchers in the order that you'd like to have them. Excuse me, I apologize. There's several things I think of that would suit the game well to do that, and it's yet another thing that baseball has not handled well. There's the thing between the Major League Baseball and the Players Association being the stewards of this game. Me personally, I think there's a lot of things they could be doing a whole lot better as the stewards of this game and making it better. And that would be one of them. Mm-hmm. One thing that I was actually wanting to talk to you about, which was I was thinking about before. I mean, with the Mets and how we've been doing with literally what we call the bench mob with how we've been doing with the depth of our team and all of our young kids coming up and playing.
And by the way, have you noticed the chatter around the league of, whenever I read an article about a Mets game that just happened and it comes from some other news source that's outside of New York or isn't, like the people that usually cover the Mets, there seems to be so much admiration for the depth that the Mets built in the offseason. We're like, boy, all that depth that they went out and got sure was smart. Too bad we don't have depth. Maybe if we had depth, we could be like the Mets. I was like, oh man, people are actually looking at what we did and said that was a good one. Good idea.
The mere fact that they're doing that and praising our bullpen, who would have thought a couple of years ago that anybody would be praising our bullpen? But if you look at the updated injury lists and when certain guys might be coming on or off or anything like that, part of my cynicism, which is how you and I just started this discussion of can you call the Mets good anymore?
Yeah.
Looking at the updated injuries and roster moves and etc. There's some, I think, concern about what we've got and who's coming back when. There's the Brandon Nimmo situation where he has a nerve issue in his hand. That's something that could go on longer than just the time frame that they put on being on an injured list.
Well, also, the guy who is supposed to be having the biggest year ever as he hurtles toward free agency. We've seen we've seen alarmingly little of Michael Conforto. You know what I mean? Yeah. And what we've seen of him, look, it's people succeed and people succeed and people fail an awful lot in baseball. It's unfair to look at the playing time he had this season and go, that's how he is as a player. But what we've seen of him so far has not been what you would call his best stuff. And so it's, and meanwhile, you got somebody like Billy McKinney that comes along who is, super fast on the bases, is playing like a real, he's a gamer. He came to play. He's, one of those guys that almost inspires confidence when you see him doing his thing. You're like, there's certain players that make you breathe a sigh of relief. And you're like, they got it, or they're going to come through in the clutch behind when they're batting. And so it is weird as you look at people like Conforto and as you look at people like Nimmo. Nimmo was obviously having a killer season before he hurt his hand. But you look at people like JD Davis and you go, they weren't necessarily having the greatest season before they got hurt. Meanwhile, we got a bunch of guys that are kind of, producing. There's some, the other thing that is equally surprising is people praising the Mets bullpen is people praising the Mets defense, which has been freaking incredible. And as much as Lindor has struggled, at bat, I think you really have to attribute a good deal of the Mets defense coming up in the world to the relationship between him and the rest of the infield and the relationship between him and McCann. We're playing some sparkling defense and people looking at JD Davis going, when he was at third, we kind of put him there because we wanted his bat in the lineup. But if he comes back, if he's healthy, even though it doesn't seem like he's going to be healthy for a while, is that the right move to throw him in?
I think that has become like when the depth was just in theory, like the depth was just a depth chart. It was just like, hey, it was shown. But now that those pieces and parts have had to kind of come into play, it has, I think, made some of the assignments that guys have gotten to be either a starter or a bench role, I think that's actually been more determinative than anything else. So, for instance, I don't think anybody pictured Villar to be, as defensively fantastic as I think he's been. He's been clutch in certain ways. Peraza has been, he's been clutch. He's been great. When JD Davis comes back, are you telling me that JD Davis is better than Peraza or better than Villar has been showing themselves at third base? Guillaume will hopefully be back soon. His projection, I think, if I'm correct, is like another week or two.
But I mean, he's a little bit easier to cope with, I think, within the organization because he was always sort of like he was part of the bench mob. You know what I mean? He was the guy, so he's not going to come back and be like, "Where's my playing time? I want to play every single day." I think
no, but a lot of people were questioning and saying, "Why isn't wasn't Guillaume the hot hand playing at third, and you're playing J.D. Davis, and then J.D. Davis happened to get hurt. Actually, both of them wound up getting hurt.
Yeah.
But look at how well the outfield defense has been going. When Almora comes back, Almora is a fantastic fourth outfielder. But as you just said before, Conforto's right now not been able to show what he can do. He is also listed as a potential return in July from a hamstring. There's a lot of things that are getting shaken up.
Let me pose this theory to you, and this is the one thing that makes me comfortable about that, because like I'll lie down on the pillow at night and like try and fall asleep, and I'll be like, when JD Davis comes back, what then? Like these are actually things that keep me up at night. And the thing that allows me to eventually get off to nappy land is this thought. Like, we've been seeing a variety of players out in the field, and we have been winning games, and we have been in first place for the last 31 days now, for a full month. And part of me, I would, in the past, I always would have said, like, a guy like JD Davis just needs a chance. He's been moved around too much. They put him in the outfield. They put him at third. He needs to know that he's an everyday third baseman to live up to his potential and get the experience and the reps that he needs to get to where he needs to be, so we can count on him. Then I started thinking a little bit differently. I was like, maybe part of our success is having depth, like having the bench mob, and having the bench mob have a bench mob, all of whom are beasts and very capable players, and have been producing defensively and offensively. And this is me going, maybe part of our success is 162 games is a grueling as hell season. And, maybe this is the way the division is won. Maybe this is way more than the division is won, by being able to rest players when they need rest, as opposed to going, you got a soft tissue thing? Nah, why don't you get out there and see what happens? I feel, and they've been saying this, they're like, we rushed some people back and we paid a price, and now we're really taking it slowly because we've got all these depth pieces that are producing. So there's no rush. So I honestly feel like if we continue to have success, I think is going to be predicated around depth, even when our so-called starters come back. We've gotten great results from bullpen games. I guess what we're looking at potentially is kind of, a bullpen game in the outfield and in the infield in some cases.
Well, allow me to devil's advocate kind of the whole thing then. And it's the cynical Mets fan in me because of the history of watching the game. I am cynical that Noah is going to come back to where he feels like he's at his strongest this season, and it's not a surprise to me. That was part of why I felt that Betances has not been what he is, because he was coming off of Tommy John, and I don't think they gave it the proper amount of time of saying it takes a long time to come back with that velocity, etc. And I think that's what Noah might be facing. So a team that's playing, as a team that's playing as well as we are, and if we are still playing this well and we're holding first place going into July, we are certainly going to be what are considered buyers in the trade deadline. Meaning we are going to have to stock up for this playoff run, to give DeGrom the support that he needs right now, to give everything to what the team needs. So you might see players like J.D. Davis, the puppies. You might see players like J.D. Davis actually become a chip for a starting pitcher, which I believe we're going to need another starting pitcher. I mean, with the best will in the world, someone like Carrasco and someone like Thor coming back, you want them to be, lights out from the first pitch, but chances are they will not be. That thing where Pete Alonso came back and hit a home run first game without having had any time in the minors, that is the exception, not the rule. So I think you're totally right. I think we will be buyers. I think it's been the rallying cry that we can't have too much depth on the Mets, and you can never, ever, ever, ever have enough pitching. And, so I would not be surprised if you see someone like J.D. Davis traded for some pitching. I would not be surprised if that pitching
came with, a name third baseman. The only problem is, like, who's really available now? Like, I think a lot of people would have said Bryant, but, the Cubs are miraculously, last time I checked, in first place. So I don't think they're looking to let him go anywhere. And, same with the Oakland A's. I don't think, like the obvious trade pieces at third base are not that obvious anymore. So, I think we go after starting position and maybe someone who they see as a starter at third. But, it is, I 100% agree. I think that, some of our depth is probably going to be traded off for some names.
Except, and what I'm totally advocating would be not giving up any of our top 10 prospects. And if you pay attention to what's been going on in the minors right now between Brett Batty, who's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Ronnie Mauricio doing really, really well. I don't want to see any of those chips go anywhere. I would rather see a J.D. Davis be floated out there for something that's major league talent, going for a hole that we need for the playoffs, which to me is always pitching. I think a trade like you were saying for Chris Bryant. I don't think it fits probably well with the Cubs in the fact that they are right there. And
not unless they start eating it on a consistent basis coming up to the trade deadline.
If they start failing and they're sellers by the time the end of July comes, absolutely. Also, the fact that they have not talked about trying to re-sign him at all, which is another. It's a Yankees type of failure of whether the Cubs are going to be investing in their team. They gave up Darvish. They did a couple of things where nobody from that World Championship team from just a couple of years ago are still there. And they were touted as, oh my God, the Cubs are going to build a dynasty right now after winning the World Series. Well, what is Chicago? Is Chicago a sea market town? Like there's no money there. Like it's disheartening.
Yeah, it's Market 3. It's the third biggest city in America.
Exactly.
And if you are a Chicago Cubs fan, I am sorry, because not that sorry, because you're in first place, so something's working for you. That's great. If you are a Chicago Cubs team, to have waited over 100 years to win a World Series and then have that happen and have the rest of and then immediately just have a whole bunch of nothing, to have no palpable sense that the people that own your beloved team that have finally managed to make it happen are doing anything to capitalize on that and build upon that is so disheartening.
Yeah, exactly. So there's, the way that our team in particular, I believe will be buyers in the 40-man roster and the 26-man roster philosophies. There are things that have to be done. I mean, the Mets spent. I'll give you a perfect example. They gave Sam McWilliams a $750,000 guaranteed deal in this offseason. He had never pitched in the major leagues, but they saw something in him and said, you know what? Let's get this guy in here. Let's see if he can make the roster. He did not have a good spring. He was particularly wild, so he did make the opening day roster. They literally designated him for assignment yesterday or earlier this week, and the Padres claimed him, and the Padres picked him up. So the Mets guaranteed and spent $750,000 on a flyer basically for a guy, and that's the price of doing business. This is a business. You want things. You want people to come here. You have to take chances with players. You have to take chances with contracts. A lot of people were looking at Lindor's 10-year deal and going, "Geez, that's crazy." No, it's not crazy. It's the price of doing business. He's not the only $300 million player that we're going to need to carry. Conforto, as you just said earlier, a perfect example. He's not getting a chance to show what he can do right now, entering into a free agency that maybe Scott Boras is going to say you have to go into free agency. But every team is now going to be looking at him saying, well, he's coming off an injury, hasn't been able to really show us what he's got right now, so everything's based on his previous work. And the Mets would be...
Do you think, not to cut you off, but do you think this whole we're not rushing people back thing specifically in the case of Conforto and Thor, do you think that is a little bit of sort of pre-negotiation where it's just like, we don't want you to come in, kill it, and drive your price up? When we talk about trading JD Davis, a team that's trading for JD Davis doesn't have a lot to go on. He was kind of like stymied within the Astros organization. He had some breakout at bats and some breakout times as both a player and as a personality with the Mets. But now they don't know what they're getting. You look at Thor, you don't know what you're getting because he's coming off of surgery. You look at a guy like Conforto coming off of a lousy start to the season as well as an injury, and you don't necessarily know what you're getting. As we keep putting up wins and as we keep remaining in first place, do you think that A, they're erring on the side of caution because it's the right thing to do and not rushing people back, and B, also going, the less of them that's out there, the better the deal we're going to be able to make with them when it comes time to sign?
I think there's 2 points to that. I think one is that in comparison to how the Mets' former front office and ownership used to deal with injuries and a lot of just cloak and dagger, like mystery kind of stuff, did not do the best and right thing by players when they were injured, did in fact rush them back, et cetera, like that.
There's more than one very big baseball name that'll tell you the Wilpons kind of burnt me out and at the cost of my health and my career for the sake of cheaping out and putting wins on the board.
Right. So what I'm saying is, one, I think the way they're handling it is a better way to handle it, because injuries will happen and rushing someone back is you're not getting them back in their best form. So no, I think they're handling it the proper way. The second thing is what I think what you might be ignoring is say JD Davis, and you're right, it hasn't been able to prove exactly what he's able to do right now. Teams that might be looking to get a JD Davis are not looking at just that. They're looking at how many more years of control do they have? What's his current contract looking like? Is it a favorable financial contract? Can the Mets make a trade, say a JD Davis for a piece that they're looking for, and include some cash incentive to that, which a lot of teams really, really need. Teams need help monetarily, so getting cash back is a big consideration for them. Picking up players that have controllable years still left on a very favorable deal is a big thing. Getting money back for international draft, which is a separate money pool for when you're drafting. All of those things for a lot of other teams comes a lot more into play than, say, the top echelon teams in the league, which are the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets. These are teams that are spending at the top of all salaries and expenditures, because they are carrying big market values, which finally the Mets are actually doing. So if we were making a trade for a pitcher from another team, in the past, everything that had to do with that deal might be in just consideration of how much control left and like that. We very well may be in a renter's market right now coming into the playoffs where we're wanting to pick up a guaranteed big time pitcher to come in and pitch. Right now, I mean, we're not gonna go for Scherzer or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the obvious one would be Scherzer. Who I do. Right. Where people, I think, not the Dodgers. Where do people think he's going to end up?
There was talk of the Yankees going for him, but the Yankees aren't spending any money.
Yeah,
and also, they're not making trades that are picking up any salaries that are putting them over that luxury tax. So right now, the several moves that the Yankees could and should be making are being determined by, can we still stay under the luxury tax, which they are very, very, very close to right now. A team like the Dodgers, when they signed Bauer because they wanted him, they said, damn the luxury tax. This is what we need to compete. So, and by the way, it was great seeing Bauer get beat by the Braves today. I was very happy to see that.
Well, I mean, we're over an hour into this podcast. podcast, and this is a whole separate conversation, but you know, like the whole Bauer is at the center of all things sticky substance related, and he put himself there by being the person to back the bus over literally anyone he could in that situation, specifically his arch rival Garrett Cole. So they clearly got a hold of him thinking like, all right, we need a long-term, what just happened? That's got to be a hold on to your butt situation. Do you think we trade for Escobar at third base? Because like he's in the last year of his contract. You know, the Diamondbacks are in the basement. I think they're still in last place last time I checked. And, you know, like he would potentially be a rental. He's 31 years old. How many years of baseball does he have left in him? You know, could he be a starting third baseman to the point where we get one of our prospects to come up who's going to be hopefully a Met for life?
Yeah, I mean, thinking long term, that's exactly why I've been saying I don't want to give up on
prospects.
Any of no top 10 prospect whatsoever. We need to have learned our lesson from the last several years of doing that. But if I was to say what needs we have in consideration of our injuries and our holes that we need to consider, a third baseman would be a solid third baseman would be a great thing to have on a temporary rental basis for this year, because I really want to see what Batty or Mauricio or any of those guys might give us on the left side, you know, to be teamed with Lindor over the next bunch of years. I think that's going to be fantastic. But we are here right now with the greatest pitcher in the league, right? In one of the greatest pitchers in history. We have to do whatever we can right now to try to make and win now for him. So yes, I think that there's a chance of say picking up a good third baseman like that would be a good thing to do. If Conforto for some reason is injured for any more length of time and or Nimmo, I'm not convinced that like McKinney to me is a fourth outfielder. In fact, I think he's a prototypical fourth outfielder, same way Almora is, and I like them both. But having riches is one thing. Like say that the Dodgers had for years. They had 5 outfielders that they were trying to figure out what to do with. I'd like to have that problem. So if Conforto comes back and can come back, fantastic.
I think also the way Billy McKinney's been playing right field, like he is right out, and he's going to get more time because it seems like Conforto's a ways off. But he is like you say prototypical. Fourth right fielder or fourth outfielder. I feel he's doing everything he can and showing some really solid work to get himself into like that, that backup situation. I feel like he's, one thing that really surprised me and it's so funny because it's like, you hear who's calling the game. I mean, obviously it was Gary, but you heard Gary and Ron Darling talking about it. They're like, Billy McKinney's really fast. Like we did not know he could run that fast, and he's fast, which bodes well for when you got to stretch a double out into a triple, and also bodes well when you got to get to the other part of the field to hit it because they got it out to the cow corner, and you've got to get there.
That's very true. There's the type of players that you want to have. You want to have a guy like McKinney. You want to have Almoras. You want to have guys, because that's our depth, and the depth is having to be used right now. When and if a lot of these elements are coming together off of injury and everything, I would love to say that our starters are doing what we need our starters to do, and that bench, that depth is what gives them the rest, like you were saying. Like a guy comes off of injury like a Conforto and a hamstring, he's not walking right back in and playing every single day. I want him at the end of the year to be playing as good as you possibly can, not staggering to the finish line. So there's a great idea and balance of McCann, and as great as McCann's hitting right now, I love him and Nito
trading off. And by the way, he 100% seems to have benefited from sharing the responsibility, and he also really seemed to take it on the chin. That showed an awful lot for him to be put at first base, for him to acknowledge that he's struggling offensively and go, sure, I'll split playing time and and then to rise to the occasion. And honestly, I feel, and like the McCann situation, splitting playing time with Nito is what gives me hope about the bench mob sort of like being there, is kind of like you have someone reliable if you've got someone, or if you've got an everyday player that just needs a break. It's a grueling, it's long season, and you don't, like with the proliferance of soft tissue injuries floating around all of Major League Baseball at the moment, if someone's like, I could use a day off, cool. We got like two guys that can do a great job. And I feel like McCann really showed just a ton of character, humility, and I was really impressed with how he's rolled with the punches and risen to the occasion over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the balance of a team, like going forward and being ready for the postseason, being ready for all these things, manifests itself in a couple of the different ways. There was criticism just several days ago that our third base coach was a little timid on sending a couple of players and testing some arms in the outfield where, test them, like send a guy, or we need a bench. We need a guy to come off the bench and pinch run in a big situation. We need to steal more bases, which has almost become fairly not non-existent, but it's certainly not a big part of the game right now in terms of how the Mets are playing. All of those elements, I think, need to kind of come together, and having jackrabbits on the bench that are fast as hell, and having the moxie to say, you know what, I personally didn't see from the replay the angle that they showed where I believe it was Lindor that they held up the other night coming around third, and instead of sending him and testing the right fielder's arm, you know what? Make him make a perfect throw. Force him to have thrown a perfect throw and have just got him at third base at home plate. Because if not, we just scored another run, a run that we really, really need. I want to see aggressiveness, and I want to see that take a chance kind of attitude, and that's the balance of the team to me.
Do you think Lindor's that kind of a player? Because it's interesting, like going again, he's all buddy, even though like there's clearly maybe it was just a rivalry between agents, but like when they were asking him like, hey, you're the most expensive shortstop, you're about to take on the second most expensive shortstop. What do you think of Tatis? And he was like, man, there's stuff I can do that he can't, and stuff he can do that I can't. And he was like, he's a little more wild. He's a little bit more aggressive on the bases. He was like, we have different body types. I wonder if stuff like that playing devil's advocate, is Lindor maybe knowing how fast he really is. Like Tatis is this long-legged, quick guy who is stealing bases like a mofo, but also, he's a little less, he's a little less rigid and regimented than he's making all kinds of errors. He's making sparkling defensive plays. He's stealing bases. He's hitting, but he's a little bit more random and sloppy than our guy is. And I wonder if that comes from the third base coach should have been more aggressive, or maybe that's our guy going, yeah, why don't we hold up here and see what happens.
I think it comes probably a little bit more to third base coach, because he's the eyes and ears of the players, say rounding second and heading towards third, and having a real eye on, okay, I know that this right fielder has a strong arm, but should I, here's the point. It's not the runner overriding it or running through a stop sign necessarily. It's the third base coach saying, go. Just sitting there like a windmill with his arm going, keep going.
I guess it really, in that situation, especially, you really are relying on the third base coach, because you're not if you're running, like you're not looking over to right field to see what's happening. You're trusting, your eyes and ears that are, you're trusted. Yeah. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Same as the other batter, or the previous batter or the previous runner that's now come home or so at home plate, standing there telling you whether you should stay standing up or whether to to get down. Even a lot of times you'll see the players like signaling go down and signaling go to the outside of the plate, so that you're staying furthest away from potential tag of a ball that's being thrown from right field, meaning it's going to be coming from the top right side of of home plate. So if you slide to the to the bottom part of the plate offside, you'll have the split extra second possibly of being able to avoid a tag. All those little elements, those are contributory things of other players and the coaches helping you, because you can't have your eye on the whole thing. I just in Mets history, having not sent guys from say third base has screwed us in many big games. There have been situations where we've been very aggressive and forced the issue. I think as a team, fundies considered, the fundies of this, let's play aggressive ball. I'd rather get thrown out trying to score that run, and I'd rather force that guy to make the perfect throw to throw you out.
Yeah, you force them to make the perfect throw, and then when they don't, they rattle you. And I think you, me, all of us, every Mets fan still carries with them that desire that we are that fast, aggressive team that's going to, cause chaos on the bases and put the other team off balance, ever since we lost the World Series in 2015 to a team who won, I think, because they did exactly that. So I think we've all kind of hoped for that. And we've got, there is real potential for us to do that, especially as our divisional lead seems to be growing a little bit. I think when I don't know if the philosophy changes at all. I'm just a fan. I don't know anything about how the game's actually really played on the inside, but I kind of feel like as you begin to stretch out your divisional lead, you might feel a little bit more comfortable taking those aggressive chances.
It's the same as if you've got a 1 or 2 run lead, you're more likely for a player on first base to push it and try to steal second. You don't do as much of that if you're in a deficit, if you're desperate to try to score runs. But if you have a cushion of a run or two, then you absolutely do that. So it's the same mentality that you've got a bit of a cushion and let's push it. And the Royals that you mentioned,
cushion for pushing,
a cushion for the pushing, and the Royals that you mentioned who beat us in 2015. If you look just the previous year, that same team losing in 2014 to the San Francisco Giants, they looked like a team that said, we are this close, like this is how we got here, we're going to do the same thing again this year, and we deserve it. And to be honest, the Royals completely deserved to win the 2015 World Series because of how they showed in 2014.
Yeah, no, I hate to say it, but there's times where I could have gone either way. I was woefully unsurprised that playing that kind of baseball, the Royals did what they did in 2015, and I think, like we said, every one of us has. Since that series, we have all wished that our Mets played baseball a little bit more like that. And you know what? The teams that are consistently dangerous seem to do that. They seem to be aggressive. They seem to take those chances. They seem to do the things that are if you are one of the best teams in baseball and you're going up against one of the other best teams in baseball, well, it's a 50-50 situation. What's going to give you an edge is something that's going to throw them off balance and cause them to make some mistakes in some critical moments. And so I think, if you are evenly matched, which in a weird twist of fate, it turns out, the Mets and the Padres were this weekend. If you are evenly matched, the edge is going to come from how much you can throw the other team off of their game.
Well, then I'm going back to our original, what our theme of today's podcast is about. Are the Mets good?
Are they for real?
I will say that the Mets are good. I want to see them great, and the things that will make them great are basically everything that you and I just talked about for this whole time, of whether they're buyers or sellers, who they're going to pick up, how aggressive they play, the big players that we expected to perform, the Lindors and McCanns, etc., that are the Alonsos that we don't need him hitting into double plays in big spots. We need him to be feared in those big spots. Though we are a good team, I want to see a great team.
I think that's an excellent way to put it. I think, although I will tell you, I wound up feeling pretty good about it, only because I don't have a problem with the Padres whatsoever, but like there were a lot of Padres fans be like, hey, let's going into this series, let's talk about all the different ways the Mets are going to eat it going in. And I was just like, you guys have a very good team, and I'm not going to mouth off because that's just not my nature. But it was really, really awesome to see the Mets give the Padres split the series, give them a hard time on the first two games where it wasn't necessarily a given up until very close to the end which way things were going to go. They fought till the very end, and they weren't easy victories for the Padres. And then the second two games of the series, the Padres got beat. Like, it wasn't close. It wasn't even, it was well, it's a seventh inning. Let's go home and beat the traffic thing if you're a San Diego fan. And I loved that. As a great Inigo Montoya once said, humiliations galore.
Well, then let me be even the more cynical, like tough fan. Those first two losses, we came up with situations that had
we should have won those games.
Yeah, those were to be had. And to be honest, at the end of the season, whether you have 90 wins or 94 wins, determining whether you win your division or whether we're right there or not, those wins that were right there in your hands are the ones that you're like, oh crap. So Alonso hitting into a double play the other day in a big spot, I got it on a first pitch. I got to admit that kind of grind my gears a little bit. I loved seeing what we did supporting DeGrom and Stroman. What I didn't like seeing is that combined between the Mets and the Padres, yesterday's game, there were 30 strikeouts combined of the two teams. That's entirely way too much strikeouts and lack of contact for both teams. Excuse me. So, good things, bad things.
The Padres have an excuse. DeGrom. Like, what you gonna do about that? And Padres kind of had an excuse today in that Stroman's looking really good. Like he's had a couple of situations where he's lost the plot. The home plate umpire's gotten to him, but when Stroman's dialed in, dude, guy is a beast.
Yep. Sign him. Pick him.
Yeah, totally. So basically, what we're saying is the Mets are going all the way.
Oh, it'll be great.
What'd you eat this weekend?
I had a wild hair up my butt, kind of craving.
Sounds delicious. Tell us how you made that. Oh, raise wild hair up the butt. Did you learn that while you were living in Italy?
You pull it out of your butt. No, I had a real craving for fresh pasta and clam sauce from scratch. So I did the entire Megillah, fresh homemade pasta from scratch, a proper clam sauce that I learned in Italy and Sicily, and it came out fantastic.
With the proper clam sauce, do you use a can of clam or do you use a fresh clam?
Both. You use real canned. I'm going to say it improperly. Canned clams are a great thing because the combination of two things: minced clams, which are the essence of the entire dish, and the juice that they're in, which needs augmentation. You don't just take it straight out of the can and hey, I'm done. But it's a great start. It's a great initiative. And then you pick up a couple of real fresh clams, and those are the Christmas tree ornaments on the entire dish. So your mixture of the minced clams and the juice from cans, augmented with a couple of fresh clams, and then working it with the proper additions of ingredients in the process. And then making the fresh pasta from scratch is also another great additive.
So when you make that, like, I think fresh pasta may be beyond some people, and like also it seems so foreign and alien to a lot of folks. Like when I saw you make fresh pasta for the first time, I was like, son of a wow, you can do that at home. A person can make that. That's incredible. However, the clam sauce, like, I'm very curious about that, and quite frankly, I think it would be a little bit shellfish if you didn't share more of that with us. How did you make it?
Wow, that well done.
Yes,
well done, Magnum.
yes, thank you.
So here's and actually this is very good that we walk through a bit of a recipe as well as how to handle it. So starting with a couple of cans of clams, open them and literally pour out the juice, trying to separate the minced clams from the juice. You want to actually kind of do a separation of them, because the first thing you need to do is cook a couple of, chop up a couple onions, chop up some garlic, your typical Italian, bases, and brown up a little bit of onions and garlic, and then add the juice and let that actually come up to a boil. Let it come up. Adding a little bit of dry white wine, adding some butter, adding some parsley, adding some basil, salt
already.
Yeah, salt and pepper, etc. So you're really actually taming the juice itself, and there's actually more of that juice than you're necessarily going to need. But what you're doing is you're cooking it down. You're letting it kind of cook down a little bit. So once it reaches a boil with all of those elements, bring it to a lower heat. Then add in the clams that you just took out and put it on an incredibly low heat. And that's just literally to bring the clams kind of really to life, and cooking them a little bit, certainly not cooking them a lot, because they'll turn into rubber on you. Separately, your pasta that you've already made, which honestly the recipe for pasta is not much different than the recipe for chocolate milk. Take chocolate, add it to milk, and mix. The recipe for pasta, it's a very, very simple thing between flour, eggs, olive oil, salt, sugars, etc. Like it's really not that crazy. It's the process of the kneading and letting all that come together, and then giving it a little time to rest. So it's a fresh pasta is not a complex recipe. Using regular pasta, using very, very good high quality pastas, a linguine or even a fettuccine, etc., or a spaghetti, is totally fine. But what you want to do is you want to heavily salt the water, a lot of water. Make your pasta just al dente. Just barely cooked, because the real essence of a proper pasta and clam sauce is once that pasta has now reached an al dente and you've had your clam juice and clams now sitting there at a low temperature, you add your pasta into that pot, and you finish to cook.
Oh, you finish the cook in the clam sauce. That's like I've never finished my pasta cook in the sauce. That's interesting.
That actually is that's an Italian, almost an Italian necessity of almost any pasta dishes, of any sauce you're cooking, even very basic sauces, or even some complex things like an amatriciana or a carbonara or like a clam sauce.
What's an amatriciana?
Amatriciana is a spicy sauce with pancetta and other like a baconish kind of flavor, which is the essence of a pasta carbonara, which is pancetta and eggs and cheese. The equivalent, the slightly spicier equivalent is an amatriciana. It's a very similar sauce. So like with the pasta, with the cooked clam sauce, you've now really kind of made that clam sauce and the juice the star of everything. You're adding the pasta to it and cooking it off just a little bit more. The pasta takes on that flavor. It takes in those things. So you finish everything all together.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it came out really good.
Huh.
And now what about you? What did you fancy yourself with?
Sorry, I was thinking to myself, should I try a clam sauce? And I thought, Shell, no, I should probably leave that to Ray.
Shell, yes, you should.
Shell, no. So again, last year I learned how to smoke, or somewhat. Like I went from zero to being confident that I could smoke something and have it be delicious if people came over. This year I want to, like I said, really kind of like hone my grill skills. Because, I've said it before, I will say it again. Smoking is a much lower stakes game. Because you get, a lot more time, and it's not the matter of, 5 minutes in one direction or another, and you're gone. Like you went from delicious to tough and rubbery. So I'm really trying to work on my grill skills. This weekend I did a marinated beef top loin steak. And it was, super simple, super obvious stuff. It was a marinade for 4 hours, olive oil, garlic, Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of soy sauce, which, by the way, you really opened my eyes to, because, I would be like, Ray, what's in a marinade? You're like, well, soy sauce. I'm like, I'm not trying to cook Asian here. It doesn't taste Asian. So that's really helped me out. So it was oil, garlic, Worcestershire sauce, soy sauce, a little bit of Dijon mustard, balsamic vinegar, parsley, black pepper, rosemary, and thyme, marinated for like 4 hours. And then, so on the grilling, this is where, everybody has a different way of doing it. Everybody has, different methods they employ in terms of you cook it on the cold part of the grill, then you sear it, or you sear it first and then you cook it on the cold part of the grill, or some people just put it right on the heat and flip. And that's exactly what I did. But what I did was I got the grill as hot as humanly possible. Bearing in mind the temperature it was outside, the thing was probably around 700 degrees, and they were reason when I saw it go to 650 and then pass it, I was like, interesting.
I'm Mr. Heat Miser. I'm Mr. Sun.
Yes. Yeah, very good. So it was just marinated the steaks. They were thick. They were about 1.5 inches thick, so there was room to play with. You knew you wouldn't cook them all the way through from the get-go like you would with a flank steak or a skirt steak. So hot as the grill would go, flipped them every 4 minutes until they were done, and they were freaking incredible. And I also, the other thing about grilling is it's not an all day ordeal the way smoking is. And I love smoking because, you hang out by the pool, you get something smoking, you can check on it every once in a while. Great. But unless you're spending the day outside, and unless you want to check on something every once in a while, especially if you're using a grill to smoke the way I do, because I'm just, doing it all on a gas grill, it's kind of a thing. So the grill thing, I was amazed how quick and easy everything was. Cause I did some baked potatoes on the grill, which was just potatoes wrapped in foil, little olive oil and salt on them, and put them in for about 20 minutes before I put the steaks on, and it was all done together, and it was all surprisingly easy. Oh, I did start that. This is something. The number of times in life after, a certain point you discover anything new is slim, especially when it comes to food. And you remember that time when you were tour managing Smash Mouth and I came out to see you guys, and you and me and Hippie, keyboard player of Smash Mouth, had dinner at that hotel restaurant?
Yes, I do remember that.
Do you remember he ordered up some shishito peppers?
Yes.
So I had never had that. I was like, what's this? He's like, oh, they're good. You want some? I was like, yeah. He was like, you can have some more. I'm like, nope, I'm ordering it because I'm going to get some. And the amount I want to eat, you don't have to share. And when I get mine, I don't care to share mine with you. This is one of the best things I've ever had. So good. So actually, for a little appetizer, made my own shishito peppers, which was like blistered shishito peppers in the pan, little olive oil. And then a sort of soy sauce, garlic, chili mix that I tossed in at the very end, and sort of as they were coming off the heat, and it sort of, I don't know, what's the proper term? Emulsified over it. Man, that was delicious. And that was,
it's funny that you mentioned shishitos, because recently I'm not a huge spicy pepper, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Fan. I was born to be mild. Let's put it that way. So, born to be mild, and but I have recently been using shishito peppers in a couple of different ways, in a couple of Asian dishes, in a like you said, cooking them up and blistering. And what's interesting about them is they're not all hot or considered hot, but randomly in the group of shishitos that you purchase, there's a random hot one.
Yeah. Although I got to tell you, this batch that I cooked up the other day, there was not a random hot one, but I know exactly what you're talking about. They're like, you're going to order a bag of them, and like 2 of them are going to be ones that you know about the next day. They will be ring stingers. I didn't get that this time.
There you go. They are good. They are good.
Well, excellent. Well, this has been a real treat. Are you cooking anything for dinner tonight, or is it leftovers?
That's a great question. Actually, I think it's just leftovers right now.
See, like I cooked up, this is like usually when I cook something, it's a massive rack of something or a giant pork butt or a huge roast, and I've got leftovers for the week. But because it was like, all right, here's some steaks, done. Tonight I'm going to undertake my first ever smash burger. Have you ever made a smash burger?
I'm familiar with them. No, I've never made one.
So it's like, it's very simple, but it's like if you are like a lot of people, you kind of, a burger involves breadcrumb and egg and something to bind it and all this sort of stuff. Smash burger is a little different. This is where you want, it's like 100% that nice brown caramelized crust that you get on the outside of the burger, but it's sort of the whole thing. So you take an amount of high fat ground beef that you would make in one burger, divide it in 2, pop it in the pan, and then you press down on it, not with a spatula because you tend to come in unevenly, but you press down on it with another pan, like usually covered in foil, something that's going to fit. So you smash them out thin, layer of cheese between the 2 of them, a little sweet tangy sauce on top. This will be tonight's experiment, and I'll let you know how it goes next week.
That sounds fantastic. I appreciate that.
Sounds smashing. All right, then.
Well, very cool.
I'm going to go eat burgers.
I'm going to eat whatever I can find. I'm going to graze.